That is why, since that day, I have been planning my escape. I slowly opened the window and I slipped through it without hesitation, landing just behind the bushes that surround the Grand Sea. Once I reached the first trees of the forest, I began to run frantically. However, as soon as I closed my eyes, I heard rapid steps nearby. Who are you?
Sir, tis not one of the ambulance. Who are ye, and what's bringing ye here?
I have already answered you. I was rescued from my homeland by Uruz and his retinue.
Take him back to its hell.
Finally, a kind and remarkable young woman arrived.
If the Grecians catch you, they'll use you to sway the guardian of the worlds and wipe out the other beings who compete with them for control of Olympus. All we can do now is wait for the rain to stop and brace for the worst, because that's when the Grecians will come.
The Guardian of the Worlds presents The Diary of Sa, Battle Between Two Kingdoms.
Inadag, the day 16th of the month of Athermenes of the year 42nd after the Universal War. My dearest diary, as you might imagine, if keeping track of time during my captivity was difficult, estimating how long the torrential downpour lasted was even more challenging. From the confines of that grim penitential chamber, I could only hear the relentless pounding of the rain, which seemed endless. However, after a while, I noticed the rain gradually easing until the faintest sound of droplets remained, signaling the storm had finally passed. Remembering Elak's words, I remained alert, straining to hear any sounds from outside that might indicate what was happening. Yet, despite my vigilance, I heard nothing that would suggest an impending invasion. The hours stretched on endlessly, each moment seeming longer than the last. My body ached from the uncomfortable position I was forced to maintain. It would have been easy enough to stand up and pull the stake from the ground, to alleviate my discomfort, but a barrier had been placed around it, preventing me from even attempting to do so. As time dragged on, doubts about Elak's warnings crept into my mind. Could it all have been a misunderstanding? I decided to stop focusing on the potential danger outside and retreated into my thoughts. It was then that I heard something being dragged across the ground, a heavy object drawing my attention. How I wished for even a small window or crack to glimpse what was unfolding beyond the walls. For a moment, I contemplated freeing myself from the ropes that bound me, but just as I was formulating a plan, Elak burst into the room, her face contorted with terror. Her expression made my heart race, fearing the worst.
I told you.
She cried, her voice shaking with panic, accompanied by frantic whinnies betraying her fear. What's happening? I asked, alarmed and fully aware that something had gone terribly wrong.
The day after the rain let up, a group of our men set out hunting. Provisions were running low, so they went to gather more. But as the hours dragged on and the sun dipped below the hills, not a one of them came back. When night fell, still none had returned. Fearing the worst, the king sent another party, this time with his son, Prince Aikuk, to track them down. 2 days passed and only the prince came back, but he's badly hurt.
What happened to the others? I inquired, though part of me already knew the answer.
Prince Aikuk said they found our men lying dead, their bodies showing the marks of a fight with some great beasts. As they turned to head back with the news, 3 Grecians set upon them, attacking with their bare hands. They slaughtered everyone, except for the prince, who reckons they left him for dead.
Or perhaps not, I said, a growing sense of dread creeping over me. The more I thought about Elak's story, the clearer it became. Perhaps they let him live to follow him back and discover our location. Elak's face twisted in horror, her wide eyes betraying a sudden realization. I'm only suggesting it's possible, I added quickly, trying to calm her as she paced the room in growing agitation.
No, you're right,
she said, visibly shaken.
Can't you hear it?
Hear what? I asked, confused, as we both fell silent.
Why do you reckon our men are taking the weapons to the walls?
Walls, I repeated incredulously. How could Elak possibly believe that the wooden fences surrounding the village would protect us from an enemy? Before she could answer, a loud commotion erupted outside, causing my heart to race. It was a sound that could only signal trouble. Moments later, the sharp blast of gunfire echoed through the air, making it clear that the battle we had both feared had begun.
They're here!
Elak said, her voice trembling as she hurried to remove the barrier keeping me bound to the stake. Hurry! Untie my hands, and I'll help you fight these monsters! I shouted, realizing every second mattered.
No!
She replied, much to my surprise. She moved toward the entrance to check on the situation. Outside, where the sounds of chaos were growing, signaling the fierce battle raging beyond.
The king ordered that, in the event of an attack, you were to be taken to the royal palace for...
But before she could finish her phrase, a massive creature burst through the wooden wall that separated us from the outside. Elak barely had time to react before the beast struck her with its enormous hand, slamming her against the wall. I watched in horror as her greenish blood spilled onto the floor, her body falling limp and lifeless. The brutal force of the attack had killed her instantly. In disbelief, I stared at Elak's lifeless form. Memories of the time we had spent together, of how she had made my captivity bearable, flashed through my mind. I could not comprehend that only moments ago she had been about to free me, and now she was gone, along with any hope I had of escaping. Elak, no! I screamed, tears streaming down my face. You monster, you'll pay for this! I leapt to my feet and rushed toward the stake. With a swift tug, I freed it from the ground, allowing me some freedom to move. But before I could turn around, the ground beneath me shook violently as the creature approached. Using the rope still tied to the stake, I swung it at the beast's face. The impact was so powerful that the monster collapsed, unconscious, its massive body crashing onto the floor. Elak! I cried as I ran to her side, desperate to help her. Elak, answer me, please! But there was nothing I could do. I cradled her motionless body, overwhelmed with grief, knowing there was no bringing her back. Through my tears, I accepted that fate had stolen her life far too soon. I barely had time to mourn when I saw the monster stirring again, rising to its feet. Realizing our battle was far from over, I grabbed the noble staff, symbol of her lineage, and prepared to confront the creature. Towering over me at nearly 10 feet tall, the beast's muscular body cast an imposing shadow. Its skin, thick and covered with dark fur, gleamed in the dim light. Two menacing red eyes locked onto mine, and its pointed ears twitched with anticipation. Without hesitation, the creature charged at me. Its speed was surprising for its size, but I was ready. I sidestepped its lunge and swung the staff, striking it squarely in the back. The force of the blow sent it crashing into the wall behind it. The impact was so strong that cracks began forming in the wooden structure. Before I could react, another monster burst through the wall and struck me with such violence that I was thrown to the opposite side of the room. I lay dazed on the ground, my strength failing me. I tried to rise, but when I looked up, I saw the massive feet of the creatures just inches away. With a surge of effort, I attempted to move, but my body did not respond. One of the monsters grabbed me, lifting me off the ground and trapping me in its grip. With a triumphant howl, it dragged me outside. The scene that met my eyes was one of utter devastation. Every Ugard who had fought to defend the village had been defeated. The Gracious, barely touched by the battle, stood victorious. As I was carried through the ruins, I saw the destroyed shelters of the four-legged creatures, now reduced to rubble. The monster carrying me followed its companions as they leaped through the dense forest with terrifying speed, leaving the destroyed village behind. The jarring motion and tight grip made it hard to breathe, and soon I lost consciousness. I recall regaining consciousness to the sensation of one of those creatures striking my face. As I opened my eyes, I found myself within a cave, dimly lit by numerous fires scattered throughout the chamber. Two of the beings held me firmly by the arms, rendering me unable to move, while another figure stood before me, its body covered by countless scars. In its hand, it clutched a strange circular stone object, which I could scarcely identify. yet I understood it to be some form of relic, signifying its rank within their group. It then addressed the assembly of creatures surrounding us, among whom were many of those fearsome monsters.
"So this weak creature's our key to ruling Olympus,"
it said with a cruel laugh. The other creatures howled with delight, their voices creating an unbearable din. In disbelief, I noticed something embedded in the stone artifact, the same magnificent stone I had seen during the New Year's celebration at the Great Hall. My mind raced. How could such a valuable object have ended up in the hands of these monsters? Had Huros and the others been attacked? For a brief moment, I feared the worst, but the creature's next words dispelled any doubts.
"Now all that's left is to send a weak gift to that cursed Huros, and soon we'll have control of the whole planet."
The creature sneered as it reached for my chest and, with a swift motion, tore the amulet of light from my neck. Words cannot fully convey the sensation that overcame me in that moment. It felt as though a vital organ had been ripped from my very being. In an instant, I grasped the true significance of that extraordinary object, which, from that point on, became an obsession, even though I had yet to unlock the powers it was said to possess. I must admit that, after that wretched creature stole my treasured pendant, I could only watch its lips move, spewing a torrent of words I barely understood. Naturally, I had never given much thought to such things before. In the Great Hall, everyone spoke the universal language, which, though varied in accent, I had learned from childhood. There had been rare occasions when I overheard the disciples of Huros conversing in a different tongue, but since I could always comprehend them, I never questioned it. Yet now I realized, whether or not I was truly the guardian of the light, that amulet held immense significance, and I knew with unwavering certainty that I had to reclaim it, no matter the cost. Though I struggled to free myself from the grip of the creatures restraining me, my efforts were in vain. They lifted me effortlessly and carried me down a series of narrow corridors until they unceremoniously cast me into this damp, cold cell, illuminated only by a faint, distant light. Here I remain, for what feels like an eternity. What fate awaits me, I cannot say.